This video will cover how to change and adjust settings in the Moodle platform for exams, tests, and quizzes. The first step is to turn on your editing. Next, you'll go down to the assessment that you would like to adjust or edit. For this particular example, we'll be doing the midterm exam. By clicking the arrow beside the editing button and then clicking the editing setting for the midterm exam. Now we've entered the editing section. You'll see the first section is called General. General will have the name of the particular assessment. In this case, it is midterm exam. Then under the name, it's description. In this particular section, whatever is typed here, this is what the student sees on the actual exam page. You'll see a little check mark here that says display description on course page. You would want to click that. The next section is called timing. In this section, we have a few areas that need to be reviewed. First is open quiz and closed quiz. These are the dates and the timing on when the particular quizzes is open. These dates would be provided to you by the college if it's an invigilated midterm or final exam. If this is a test, quiz, or assignment for an individual course outside of an invigilated exam, you would need to set up your own specific opening and close dates. Then you have your time limit. This particular exam is 2 hours long. And one of the most important settings is when time expires. You will see a drop-down menu of multiple different options. You always want to set this for open attempts are submitted automatically. What that means is that if a student gets to 2 hours and 1 second, if this setting isn't correct and put into open attempts are submitted automatically, it will delete the attempt and the student will lose all the information. By open attempts are submitted automatically, that means that that information will be submitted at 2-hour mark and the content will not be lost. And then the next section is the grace period. The grace period is set at 0 minutes. We recommend that all invigilated exams be set at 0 minutes because we don't give extensions for grace periods in that format. You'll notice these question marks beside each one of these particular settings can be adjusted. You'll notice if you click onto a question mark, it describes what this particular setting is and what it represents. So if you do have any questions about a particular setting, please click onto the question marks. Now let's move on to the next section, grade. The grades, you'll want to first click onto the grade category. The grade category you create in the grade book. In this particular example, so far there are 2 categories, a final exam and a midterm. You would click on to the midterm as this is the example. The grade to pass, this is where you'd put what grade the student needs to acquire to pass this particular exam. This only represents and will change the color of the boxes within the grade book. So it'll turn to green if the student passed, it'll turn to red if the student failed. And then attempts. This is the number of attempts the student has at a particular exam or quiz. We'd always want to have it set at 1 for an invigilated exam, and most quizzes would always be set at 1 anyway, but if you are creating a particular assessment that is a non-graded assessment to help the students learn the material, you might want to change that. That might want to be unlimited, and they can do that as often as they'd like to understand and get to know the material. That is also an option. Now we move down to layout. The layout represents how many questions you'll have on each page. Most exams are set up to have 1 question per page, and that's the standard recommendation, but if there's a pedagogical reason why you would want more questions on a particular page, you have that option in this particular setting. When you click on the show more, you'll see one more setting called navigation methods. We always recommend it to be set for free and not for sequential. Free means that a student can go back and forth between different questions and adjust so they can go through all five. If there was 5 questions on the exam, go through all 5, then go back to question 1, adjust their answers, or answer the questions in a different order. Question behavior. Shuffle within questions. What this represents is only for multiple choice questions that they will shuffle the A, B, C, D answers for every question for every student. This way, the system will automatically still mark what is correct and not correct for a particular question, but it changes the variety for each student. And how questions behave, we always want to set that to defer feedback. We do not want to give feedback during an exam. Now moving to the next section called review options. If you want to understand what each one of these major 4 sections represent, you can click on the question mark beside the review options. But in short, a majority, if not all of our exams and quizzes, we want to first have the during attempt. It's automatically set to the attempt, which is a standard. We want the student to be able to see their particular attempt during the attempt. In the after the quiz is closed section, we want to ensure that all of these are unclicked. We don't want students going into a quiz after they've completed the quiz or exam with the ability to go in and take screenshots of questions. This can compromise the exam for future classes, and that's what we want to avoid. If you have a pedagogical reason of why you want to have these particularly checked off, and it fits within the course, you are more than welcome to, but it has to make sense, and you can reach out to your program manager to discuss. Next section is appearance. This section should be used as the standard settings of no image to show the user picture. The decimal places for grade should be 2, and the decimal places for question grade should be the same. These shouldn't be needed to be changed. If they do for some reason, again, for pedagogical reasons, you can make that change. The next section is extra restrictions on attempts. This is where the required password is entered, and it's entered by the college. You do not need to enter this password, nor do you need to know what the password is, because this gets sent out to the invigilators, and they're the ones that input it in. So students never find out what the password is inputted, and you as the instructor should never change a password because they are standardized so that all the invigilators across the system know what this correct password is. If you're creating your own exam or quiz, and this is not an invigilated exam, you do not require a password, but if you do for some reason, reach out to your program manager. In the next section, required network address, always ensure that there is nothing in that section and it is blank. If there ever is anything input into that section, students will be unable to see the exam or the quiz and will not be able to participate. In the last 2 sections, this enforces delays between first and second attempt. This will only be activated or needed if you are providing multiple attempts on a quiz, which, again, majority, that is not going to be the case. As we scroll down, the next section is overall feedback. This feedback is what students see once completed the exam. In this particular example, it's just stating that there will be a review of the exam once the exam has been closed. There are other feedback fields that can be added if required. A majority of exams and tests, this is all that would be required to be inputted into overall feedback. Next section is common module settings. These particular settings are standard within the course and majority do not need to be changed. The only one I'd like to point out is group mode, so that if you have particular tests designed for particular groups, if you've broken down your class into groups, that is where you can set up these particular tests to only be assessed by particular groups. And then in the next 2 sections, restricted access and competencies, there's really no need to add any of these restrictions or competencies. If there is something that you feel that needs to be added to the course or adjusted within these sections, please speak to your program manager. So lastly, and one of the questions that we get most is, what if we have to make adjustments for a particular exam, quiz, or test for a student for an accommodation? So let me show you how you do that. So what we're going to do is return to the course, go back to the midterm exam, and then once we're onto that page, you'll see in the top banner of Moodle the module settings. Click on module settings and click user override. This is the area where you can add in an exception for a particular student. So click add user override, and then from this drop down menu you'll see all the students that are registered in the course. For this particular example, there is no students registered in the course, but you would choose from this drop down and pick the student that requires the accommodation or adjustment for the particular assessment. The required password would remain the same as what is already set in the password section for this particular exam. And then now you can change the open and close dates and times for one particular student. The time allotted, you can adjust that, and then you can also adjust the attempts allowed. Once you've completed your adjustments, you can hit save, and you've adjusted and changed and made the accommodation for that particular student. That covers how to change and edit and ensure that you have the correct settings for Moodle exam, test, or quiz, and also how to add or adjust for a particular accommodation for one particular student on an assessment. If you have any questions about this video, please don't hesitate to reach out to your program managers.